All right. Welcome back to a new episode of the Community Collective podcast. I am Johnny B. Good, the flip flop agent in our Remax Edge studio / office / whatever we want to call it. Back with my man Travis Howell. How you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing really good. How are you?
It's Monday. We're recording on a Monday. I am not feeling the vibe today.
Oh, it was a busy weekend.
It feels like a Monday.
Oh, I feel like I was running around all weekend. I don't think I even got the
I know.
chance to relax between birthday stuff and sports, doing stuff around the house. And
we finally sat down last night. The wife and I did probably about 9:30, and about 15 minutes later, I'm like, I'm going to bed. I'm out, done. All these kids and their activities.
Oh.
So much space for activities.
I've been sitting down finding a TV show to watch that I haven't watched in a while. So I get going.
I'm always watching the sports ball.
Oh,
Whatever's on the TV, I can't help myself. So I was watching that.
I got to go for some mind-numbing comedy shows.
That's fine.
It's
That's the only way to live.
Yeah.
I mean, Seinfeld's the just give and go to, right?
Oh,
like that's where I
but
go.
Right now, I'm going to kick for Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Oh, yeah. That's super.
Yeah.
I don't know that I would watch that with my kids, though.
My kids are in bed when I watch it.
That's respectable.
I don't think anyone would enjoy that one.
I mean, I would enjoy it. I'll
Yeah.
come watch it with you.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, I'm excited today. We have one of my friends I've gotten to know quite a bit, and I will say we might not always agree on things, but I think we are a great example of people that get along just because of a friendship and kind of that kind of political nerdness about it. So
I'm just going to mute my microphone because I'm not going to have anything.
You're not that type of nerd, right? Yeah. So today we are joined by the Genesee County Clerk, Register of Deeds, Dominique Clemons.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. As we say, there's never a dull moment, day or weekend in the clerk's office, and that's certainly been the case this year.
And this is the year that you have nonstop stuff going on. And there's been lots of local elections that you guys have to work with, and then everything countywide. And now we have coming up this fall nationwide stuff. So, gosh, it's for your age and being younger, you chose a career that is going to be nonstop changing all the time.
All the time, and certainly unexpected to be in this role, but it's a lot of fun. It's a big office, so no 2 days are the same, which I love.
Well,
always a new adventure.
Well, and I think your job, too, is great because not only is it office-centered with your team, but you're out in the community everywhere, too, because your role is also to, I think, help educate people, but then also show them that the clerk and register of deeds is a personal person out there interacting and talking to people.
So for those of us that are not in the political zeitgeist, before we get into our actual questions here, why don't you give us a quick rundown of what it is that you do in your role as the county clerk and the Register of Deeds?
Absolutely. And that I could probably fill an entire hour with that.
No problem.
Again, my name's Dominique Clemons. I have the honor of serving as the Genesee County Clerk and Register of Deeds. I was in a position that I was appointed to. Now, it's usually an elected office.
Okay.
My circumstances were a little bit unique in that my predecessor stepped down, resigned from office as part of a plea deal for misconduct in office. And I was unexpectedly appointed to fill the position, a big one, as I mentioned.
Sure.
There are a lot of different things. The part that's most public that a lot of people recognize and realize when we talk about county clerks is the election side of things.
Right.
I am the chief election administrator for the county, which means this year is a very exciting year for me. In the state of Michigan, our election process is very decentralized. We have involvement at the very top at our state Secretary of State. We have involvement at the counties as well as the cities and townships. So my role as county clerk in the election process, I am the pre and the post to the elections. So the preparing of ballots, the programming of election equipment, and then the audits and the certification of the votes and the canvass and the recounts and recalls and all of those special niche parts of the election. Whereas your city and township clerks, they're the ones that handle the day-to-day, giving out ballots, talking to voters, and handling those things. Outside of elections, which seems to take up a big piece of time, but is less than a quarter of my job,
Wow.
is a couple other really big and important divisions. As county clerk, I am the clerk of the circuit court. So I work every day with our circuit court judges. The circuit court clerks are actually staff of the court, and then I provide strategic oversight and support to them overseeing those records. And that's basically all of the divisions. I am the record keeper for the county.
Okay.
So the boards and commissioners, the county board of commissioners, the road commission, I am their record keeper, taking their minutes and their notes. I have a vital records division. That's probably actually the biggest and most active division. And that is the division that oversees the distribution of birth certificates, death certificates, marriage licenses, gun licenses, notary registrations, and small business DBA registrations.
Okay.
So any of those major life events that somebody's happening, our office is involved with getting the documentation for that.
Sure.
And then the last division is our property records division, our deeds division, where we record deeds and liens and mortgages and all of the different records around people's physical property and land that they own.
See, now that's in my wheelhouse.
Oh,
There we
he
go.
went down this big long list. I don't know how he keeps up with everything. I know you have a
Sure.
great team, but that's a lot. If I did a checklist, I don't know if I could keep up with everything, Dominique.
It's hard to keep up with, and I do. I have a great team. There's about 25 individuals on my staff that oversee all of those different things. Each person specialized in a very specific part of all of that operations, and I get to be the one that kind of knows just a little bit about everything.
Right. Right.
Gosh, I don't know if my mind's kind of blown right now. All the details he has to.
I really enjoy my private business employees and all my stuff here. You guys dealing with the public and all the nuances of everyday life and government bureaucracy. Nah, no thanks. I'm good over here all on my own.
But you have to deal with people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's
so you're
true.
dealing with people.
Occasionally when I
Occasionally,
feel
right.
like working, when I'm not
When
podcasting.
you're not- Well, Dominic, I know that you mentioned you were appointed to your position of clerk and register of deeds. And what are some of the most impactful changes that you've implemented in the office, and how do those services really benefit the residents of Genesee County?
So we've spent a lot of time in our office bringing the Office of the Clerk Register into the 21st century and providing a new way to do business and service. At the very base level, it's just being more involved in the community. You've mentioned that. I think any elected role, that's the core of who we are, is interacting with the public. And that doesn't mean waiting for someone to come to your office. It means being an active part of the community, and sometimes on the fun things, going to community events and chamber meetings and things like that. But also making sure you have that presence to help people and provide support, have tables at community events and provide services and resources. Since I've taken office, we've done a couple of things in each one of those divisions to streamline services. One of the big things overarching is creating a much more user-friendly and digital footprint for our office. So not just being on social media where people can get information about updates of what we're doing when we're closed, but also making sure more of our services are available online, that somebody can go online and request a copy of their birth certificate, that somebody can record a property record online with our e-filing. One of the new things we implemented this year on that same note of things is candidates can now file their campaign finance reports online, which I know is super in the weed for most residents and most listeners on here. They're not thinking necessarily about campaign finance reports, but just another example of getting all of these resources available online. One of the things I'm most proud about, though, in our office was a partnership with our County Board of Commissioners to allow my office to start having fee waivers. So for an individual who needs a vital record, I'm talking specifically a birth certificate or a death certificate. People need birth certificates for all sorts of reasons. To enroll your kids in school is one of the biggest ones. You need it sometimes for certain things, for housing. You need it for passports. You need it to get married. The list goes on and on for why you would need a birth certificate. The cost of birth certificates are set by the County Board of Commissioners, and in Genesee County, that cost is $25 per record. So if you are a mother that has 4 children, that's $100 for 4 birth certificates required to enroll your kids in school. So you have to pay $100 to enroll your kid in school.
Right.
And we had the situation where a mother came into our office who was, quite frankly, excited that she had saved up the money to get 4 birth certificates. And I happened to be in the office and I asked the question, what did you do to save up? You seem really excited that you saved up. And what she told me broke my heart. She said for 2 months, she went without filling her prescription medication.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
She made the choice to not have life-saving medication, potentially could have had catastrophic results in order to send her kids to school. And I said, no person in Genesee County should have to make the decision between medication and sending their kids in school.
Yeah.
So I partnered with our Board of Commissioners to start a fee waiver program where those that are on any sort of public assistance, food stamps, Medicaid, Social Security, anything like that, can get free vital records, free birth certificates and death certificates, so that they don't have to make that kind of decision, that their money can be used towards the critical things that they need. The county clerk, we are the record keepers.
Right.
We are not the secret keepers.
Right.
That's amazing, though. I mean, what
That's
it
fantastic.
sounds such like a little idea, but it has such a big impact on probably so many people. Because you look at our county, and I feel like we have all types of demographics and backgrounds. And when someone comes into your office, you don't know their story.
Exactly.
And I mean, and you can't really just sit there and say, judge a book by its cover. So you could be someone doing really well. You don't know that, but they could also be struggling in some ways. It depends. But I love that you're willing to step up and say it's more important that people are able to send their kids to school, that they're able to get that, maybe they lost something like their social security card or something that they can come to you and work like, hey, what way can we do this? But mostly I love that story. This mom want to make sure a requirement to send your kids to school and paying money to get something that's required by the school districts. It's amazing. I can't even imagine. I mean, you have 4 kids.
Oh, I have 4 kids. Absolutely. Thank God my wife, she must be my county clerk because she is the record
Yeah.
keeper. She is the one that is responsible. She is the one that's doing all the work. So, I mean, I absolutely get it. My wife and I just ended up renewing our passports,
Yeah.
and going through the same process. And I'm like, I don't even know if I have my birth certificate. One of those situations, I'm just like, I don't even know where to find this stuff. And she shows up and boom, she got this one and this one and this one and this one and has all my docs. But I mean, that is a very important part of everyday life. And you don't realize that you necessarily need that stuff. And it's not something that's at the forefront of your mind, but those 1 or 2 times you need it,
Right.
you are up the creek if you don't have it.
That's right. Probably with the exception of me and my staff, nobody thinks about their birth certificate until they actually
Yes,
need it.
You're
That's it.
exactly right.
We get calls all the time, and unfortunately, we get into a spot where there's not a whole lot we can do, where folks are getting ready to go on vacation.
Yes.
If they call a few days before, we can make something work. But we've had calls where folks are in Florida in line for that cruise ship and says, I need a birth certificate. Well, you're a few hundred miles away now. It's a challenge.
Yeah.
But yeah, I always suggest folks, like, once you get that document, that record,
Yeah.
keep it in a safe place
Yes.
so you don't have to think about it, but you have it when you need it.
Right.
Well, I know with scanning documents too, for us, that's been nice. That
Mhm.
way there's a second avenue in
Oh,
case
yeah.
our paper copy gets destroyed. I mean, think about it. My daughter's 14. We've had kept like a sheet of paper for, 14 years.
My entire
It's-
life is uploaded to the cloud.
Oh, yeah.
Like
Well,
everything that
even-
I get that matters, I'm gonna snap a little picture of this baby and hit that upload button and up
Well,
it goes.
I even feel like a great example of that too is like when your kids are born, they start getting different types of vaccinations or
Sure.
anything. Like the very first time, it was here's a sheet of paper, and the doctor's office like folded it in half. I'm like, oh great, this is good. And again, it was like it wasn't like computer paper, and it's like we took it there for the first few years, and then finally like, oh yeah, we're all digital now. I'm like, so do I have to keep this paper anymore? Like it is. So
Right.
I think that's the nice part too is with I think the looking towards the future, you guys making things more accessible like digitally and someone from home can request something. It's such a smart move. We've talked about this for the chamber
Mhm.
for a while, and we're working on goals of making our website just for our community use so much more user friendly, and it takes time.
It does.
Imagine-
But it's really pivotal though,
yes,
to your point, that people can access these things, they can understand what they need to do, almost to do a little bit of pre-work before they have to come into the office. Like have these documents with you, have these items with you. If you're going to request this, do this, whatever that is. That goes a long way because I'm a planner in that regard. Like I don't want to just show up to the clerk's office and be like, hey, I need this. And then you're like, well, I can't help you. Did you bring this and this and this and whatever
Exactly.
else? So to be able to go online and do the searches necessary so that I can do the work, so I can show up and I can be efficient and your staff can get their job done and I can be on my way is great.
And that's a really good point because we see that all of the time that you can't just walk in and say, hey, I need a birth certificate. I need to know who you are, right? Which is a challenge sometimes in our community of individuals that may not have other documentation.
Sure.
So we're trying to find ways to partner with other agencies like the Social Security Agency,
Mhm.
like the Secretary of State, that you might not have an ID, but we've got a birth certificate, they've got the ID. Let's put all these pieces together. in that online expansion. So right now we list all of the information you need if you come into our office.
Right.
We also have it available, the current online system, you can order the record and it gets mailed to you,
Oh,
which is
wow.
great
Oh,
if
yeah.
you have time,
Sure.
right? If you're planning. One of the things we're working with the state to try to move not just our county, but the state forward is not only requesting these records online,
Mm-hmm.
but allowing state law change to allow us to digitally certify and send them to you electronically.
Nice.
That you could
Oh,
request a birth certificate or a
yes.
death certificate, and we could then email you a secure encrypted copy of
Yep.
that has a digital certification. We're still a few steps away from that. There's still some state approval, but that's the direction we're trying to go
I
with
like
our
it.
office.
Yeah.
I'll nerd out here for a second. We just got to get you guys on the blockchain.
There you go.
We get you on the blockchain, we're good to go. And then everything's there and you don't ever have to mess with it.
Exactly.
Well, I will say, so one of the big roles, I think, especially this year,
Especially this year.
yeah, especially this year, and I think a lot of people have their own opinions, which is nice, and I think you hear so many other conversations going on. But coming from the chief election official for Genesee County, how are you ensuring that our local elections are secure and accessible for all voters?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And at the top of that, it's important to know that the elections in Genesee County and across the state of Michigan are just that. They are safe, they are secure, and they are accurate. And we have a ton of checks and balances throughout our system that ensure that. As I mentioned, we have a very decentralized system with involvement from the state, the county, and the local governments.
Mhm.
The local clerks are the ones handling ballots. The county clerk is the one handling the certification and tabulation. The state oversees all of the policies and procedures and rules for audits. So there's a lot of folks involved. And the more folks that are involved, usually the more checks and balances they are. But looking specifically at some of those checks and balances and some of the things that a lot of the voters may not necessarily be aware of. And the first thing I'll say about this is all of the steps I'm going to talk about are public processes. Every part of our election process is open to the public, from the approval of what goes on the ballot at the Election Commission, to the testing of the equipment at public accuracy testing, to the tabulation of the ballots at the polling locations, the receiving boards at the city and township halls, and in my office on election night, would we receive the data logs of all of that, watch that process. When we talk about voting, I think one of the biggest things where rightfully so, there's a lot of concern about is that mail-in ballot process, which actually has some of the most steps there to that. So when we talk about ballots, the first thing that I'm going to say that I thought would go without saying, but apparently we have to reiterate, is that in the state of Michigan, every ballot that you have, if you've ever voted, you know you're picking up a physical item, a ballot that is made of paper. We have paper ballots, regardless of what anybody says.
Right.
Those ballots are paper. It is paper ballots that you put through a voting machine.
Mhm.
Those paper ballots all are programmed at my office, the county clerk's office. So if, per se, there were ballots from somewhere else being shipped in, which there are not, they would not even work in our machines
Right.
because they have not been programmed here. Each ballot has a stub on it, a ballot number. We have to track every single ballot that gets voted, every ballot that doesn't get voted, and we have to continue to stay in that numeric order.
Hmm.
Now, when we talk about mail-in ballots, you have to affirmatively request to have a ballot sent to you in one of two ways. You can either say, hey, I want a ballot mailed to me for this specific election, and your city or township clerk will mail you a ballot just for the election. Or you can sign up for what's called the permanent ballot list, where you can be on a list that you'll receive a ballot for every election moving forward once you sign up. And once you've filled out that application, either for a one-time election or to be on the permanent list, either way, when that ballot comes to you, there's still security steps that have to be followed. And the biggest one, where there seems to be some confusion, especially with voters, is when you receive a ballot, it's going to come to you in an envelope with your name on it. And if there's multiple people in your household that are getting ballots, you, your wife, your kids,
Mhm.
they each have their own envelope with their name on it and their own ballot. When you take that out of the envelope and you fill it out and you turn it back in, you can't just put it in anyone else's envelope. Those envelopes are barcoded with that person's name. And on that envelope, you actually have to sign your signature. If you don't sign your signature on that envelope, your ballot will not be counted.
Hmm.
When they open that, they're going to look at that ballot number and that signature and say, this ballot was not issued to this woman. It was issued to her husband. The clerk's going to call you and say, this signature doesn't match the ballot that was issued.
Right.
Then you're going to be required to either come into the local clerk's office and verify your identity and signature in order for your vote to count. Or perhaps you did sign it, but that signature just doesn't look like what's on file. You're going to get a call and they're going to say, we need you to come verify your identity, certify your signature, and if you don't, your ballot will not be cast. The clerks across the state of Michigan all go through a training on the signature cure process, on how to track signatures and make sure it matches. And what they're basing those signatures off of is what's on your driver's license through the Secretary of State's office, which where sometimes becomes a challenge is we all recognize that through the natural progression of life, people's signatures are going to change, especially if you've had a medical condition that your mobility has been limited.
Right.
You might sign with just an initial now, or you might use an X to sign. If that's the case, we still are not going to accept that ballot unless you either come in and verify your identity, or you are proactive and you go to the Secretary of State or your county clerk to get that other signature on file that you now use an X or you now print your name.
Sure.
If it doesn't match, no matter what the condition is, that ballot will not count until you prove your identity to us. And that's one of the big steps I think a lot of folks don't realize is in our election process. When it comes to the counting of votes, there are so many steps. When the polls close at 8 p.m. on election night, if there's somebody in line at 8 p.m., they still get to vote. Whoever's in line when the polls close gets to vote. If you get in line at 8:01, you don't get to vote. But if you're in line at 8 o'clock and it takes 2 hours to get that line cleared, you get to vote. If you're in line at 8 o'clock and it takes 30 seconds, you get to vote.
Sure.
Once everyone has voted and cleared the voting area, then we do our shutdown procedure. And at every polling location, and this is not just for the election day voting, I'm also talking the 9 days of early voting, which we now have in Michigan, there should be an equal number of Democrats that are there during the entire day of the election running the process. And that equal number of Democrats and Republicans do the closing down procedure, where they're making sure that the number of people that signed in to vote matches the number of people in the computer that we listed as voters, matches the number of ballots that are in that voting machine. And that voting machine is in no way, shape, or form connected to the internet. It is just a device that the ballot goes in. It's an optical scan. It takes a picture of both sides of the ballot and is a counter. It doesn't transmit any data, counts all of that, and it stores that on a couple of different ways. So we've got the physical ballots that are sitting in a box.
Sure.
That is piece one. Piece two is the digital data. So in every voting machine, there is what's called a V drive, which is kind of like a fancy USB drive.
Okay.
And that is collecting all of the data, not just the votes cast, but the log, exactly what time each ballot was cast. If a poll worker closes down the machine, if the power goes off, all of that is being logged. Everything that happens with that machine is logged. And then thirdly, there is what looks like a receipt tape that comes out at the end of the night. So once all of the voters have voted, the poll workers go through a process to close down that requires a password and a separate device, what we call a Verity key, which is another encrypted device, in order for those results to come out of the machine. All of that happens. The tape, that receipt tape, shows what the results are. And we actually make 3 copies of that receipt tape. And those 3 copies go with 3 different copies of the poll book that was used throughout Election Day. That poll book lists all of the voters that voted. It lists all of the challenges and issues that happened. And they get separated 3 different ways. One set of all of this data, paper data that gets printed out, goes to the city or the township clerk's office. One set of that data comes to my office, the county clerk, and the third set goes to the probate judge. So now there's 3 different iterations of the election data. So if one of them get tampered, there's 2 others that are going to have the exact same results, A. But B, if there's a natural disaster, if there's a flood, if there's a fire on election night at the township hall, we still have all of the election data secure in 3 different locations. And then that electronic drive is what comes to my office at night. That electronic drive, we plug into what's called our election computer, another device, a computer, specially programmed, not connected to the internet in any way. That is where we upload all of the results from every single precinct across the county. From that computer, we then take a regular flash drive, and we actually have a ton of them. We plug in a new flash drive into that computer, and we download those election results, and we plug that flash drive into our county computer, which is connected to the internet. It's our regular, county computers that we use, and that's what we send to the media. That's what we upload for voters to see. Then we go to do another round of uploads with a brand new flash drive
Sure.
There's no chance that a virus or malware or anything can get on our election computers.
Great.
And those are just some of the many
Wow.
security steps that go into our
So-
election.
If I'm thinking about this correctly, you deserve the entire month of December off.
You would think,
Right?
but-
Oh my gosh.
So the election's
Yes.
not over on election day. That's when our work really begins,
Sure.
especially my office. So leading up to election day, up until about the week before the election, I am really busy. Election day itself is
It's like
until
the
8 p.m.
calm before the storm.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
My busy starts 8 p.m. on election night when the polls close and we start counting. And then I am usually busy through the end of December because we have to then certify the election. So the results you see on election night are not official. Those are subject to change when the Board of Canvassers certifies the election. They handle military and overseas ballots. They handle those signature ballots that we talked about.
Right.
They have about 2 weeks to certify the election. So now we're pushing just before Thanksgiving.
Right.
We all get those few days off for Thanksgiving. And once the election is certified, anybody that has a close race or has any reason to think results could change can request a recount.
Mm.
And then those recounts happen usually through that month of December. In a presidential year, December 13th in the state of Michigan is where our electors go to the state capitol to to actually cast their vote for president of the United States. So the election isn't over, especially in a presidential year,
Sure.
until
Gosh.
the second week in January.
Wow.
And then I get the rest of January off.
Right.
There
All
you
right.
go.
Deal.
That's-
And
that's-
deservedly so.
Right.
You know, obviously the sanctity of our elections in the United States is extremely important to all of us. So I have an additional level of comfort now speaking with you, knowing that there are checks and balances. This isn't just a bunch of random people tossing around cardboard boxes with ballots in them. You know, and I think that lends a lot of credibility to what you and your team and your office does. And I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
Which I think the good thing is too for people to know is, I mean, this is Genesee County, but what you guys are doing also matches what's going on in other counties too. The county clerks all across the state follow the same guidelines,
Exactly.
and I think that's something that's nice to see and understand. And I mean, I know too, even as simple as you guys are work to confirm everybody's name is spelled correctly too, and you give like a copy of like what the name would look like on the ballot to that candidate too. So like you're
Right.
doing like every little step.
Well, let me clarify this. Isn't Genesee County like one of the top 10 populated counties in the state?
It is. We are the 5th largest county in the
largest.
state.
Okay.
So-
So the fifth largest county in the state, obviously a lot of responsibility lands on you and your team's shoulders, to ensure that all these votes get counted properly and results get published and things like that.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah.
I take my kids up to vote so I can show them that, you
There you
got to
go.
do your civic
Yep,
duty.
Exactly.
But, that's a long half hour for me. You've got about a long 30, 45 days ahead of you
Yeah.
when it's all
Yeah.
said and
Oh.
done.
And the process leading up to that is just as long. Of course, in
Sure.
a big year like this, we have the big one, the November election.
Right.
Right.
We just got through a month ago the August primary.
Right.
We also had a May election and then the February presidential primary. So 4 elections. So when we talk about a presidential election year, our office is gearing up in October of the year before.
Right.
That's like his
So many
preseason
steps.
right there.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You get a couple months of preseason, then a whole year.
That's wild. All right. Well, let's close the door on the election process, at least at this point.
I think
So, Dominic, you've been involved in so many community organizations, a few of them being the Rotary Club of Flint, the Genesee County DEI Commission. How do you really leverage those connections to better serve these underrepresented communities in our area?
Absolutely. So I was born and raised here in Genesee County, went to Flint Southwestern High School, and absolutely just love Flint and Genesee County. It's been my home for generations of my family.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why I got involved in public office was wanting to give back and serve the community. But serving the community is much more than just holding an elected office. And I think everybody should be involved in the community, get involved on different boards and commissions to give back and to have an impact. But as you mentioned, being on these boards and commissions does have some benefits too, especially in my position to be involved in information sharing and leverage relationships to move our community and our county forward. I have the opportunity to be on actually 9 or 10 different community boards and organizations.
Oh, my
Good-
goodness.
good.
Thank you. Some directly government related, like our county's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Commission, that's really just centered around making Genesee County a welcoming place for people of all backgrounds, no matter
Sure.
what your racial identity is, no matter what your religious beliefs are, no matter what your political affiliations are. Some of the boards I'm on are a little bit more based on volunteering. I'm on the board for YMCA Camp Kopniconic,
Oh, yeah.
on a couple of foundation boards, the Mott College Foundation, where we raise money for scholarships for students, just ways that we can give back. And Rotary is the biggest one, and that the entire mission of the Rotary Club is twofold. One is the eradication of polio worldwide,
Yep.
to help make a worldwide impact on such a nasty and brutal disease that we've done so good here in the United States on basically eradicating. But there's still 3 countries in the world that are still suffering with that and
Wow.
providing resources for that. But the second fold of that is that community engagement, that our Rotary Club of Flint is we are always raising money and doing events to help the community. I know there are several Rotary clubs throughout Genesee County, and we partner together in a lot of these events, primarily because we love this community.
Mhm.
The Rotary Club itself, is a lot of elected officials, business leaders, nonprofit leaders, young folks that just all sit down together and say, let's make sure it stays cool
Right.
for generations to come.
Right.
No.
Yeah, without a doubt.
I think it is. I mean, we know more too on the side of the chamber.
Mhm.
That's what we worked really hard at doing, is making sure. And I think you look at, and you've been at one of our lunches, but I think actually a couple, but you spoke at one of them, that trying to make it a more welcoming thing. And we even went as far as like changing the name of what we call our lunches, the
Mhm.
community connection lunch.
Yeah,
Just
I love
making
that.
sure it's for the whole community. And I think you're right. It's the purpose of trying to find what areas can we invest back, whether it's with our local students or if it's, our supporting our parks or anything out there. And I think that's what you're really passionate about too, is not only your job, but you're using your role in a positive way, getting involved in so many things. And I think that also gives you a chance probably just to kind of relax a little bit, and you don't have to focus on work the whole time. This is what this mission of this group is. This is how we want to help this organization.
sure.
This part, which is probably a little nice change up for you
Right.
sometimes too.
So I'm going to put you on the spot.
All right.
As we look to the future, what do you really see as like the initiatives or the things that you want to continue to improve upon in the clerk's office with the Register of Deeds? What are you really looking to innovate on and towards in the future?
Sure. So I've been in this role for just over a year and a half now.
Oh, has it felt like 20 years?
But in clerk world, I am one of the newbies. I'm actually the youngest serving county clerk or register of deeds in the entire state of Michigan.
Oh,
Uh,
hell
so-
yeah. Good for
Yeah,
you,
I
man.
Thank you.
Good for
Thank
you.
But that means I still have a ton to learn.
Sure.
So I am committed to just continuing to learn the process. We've gone through a lot of unique challenges in the last year and a half in the clerk's office, which has given me the opportunity to do some of that learning. And from that, I've actually already been put on a couple of state boards with my colleagues. I'm on our state legislative committee for the Clerks Association. I'm on the State Electronic Recording Commission. I think being the young person, we've already talked about my desire to take things more digitally. My colleagues have seen that, and I was actually appointed by the governor to be on this board that helps set standards for the entire state on the electronic recording of property records.
Oh, nice.
Oh,
And those are the type of
yeah.
things I'm really passionate about, is how to not only move our office forward as the Genesee County Clerk,
Right.
but making sure we're providing similar services across the state of Michigan, that everyone has those online resources and access. The other big thing that I am really personally invested in is, specifically in this office, but broadly, bringing elected offices back to the people.
Hmm.
I get, the federal level, president, Congress, U.S. Senate, these are big roles that are out in Washington, D.C. But when we talk about local positions, city, township, county offices, we should be interacting every day with our community. And that's one of the great things about being on some of these boards, is I get to hear directly
Right.
from our residents on what the issues that are affecting them. And a lot of times they're things that have nothing to do with my office.
Right.
But I know where we can direct them and guide them and provide those services. And really trying to, over the long haul, change the view of local government, that we're not here to put regulations on people. We're not here to make people's lives hard. We should be here to provide a resource and a service and make people's lives easier and
Right.
make things more efficient. And that's what I really am hoping over the next term. I'll be serving over at least for the next 4 years in this capacity, and hopefully longer if I'm reelected, to just make life easier in Genesee County, to make operations smoother. But really, one of the things we've just started on is really pouring into my team.
Yeah.
I mentioned I have a staff of about 25 individuals. These are the folks that are on the ground every single day interfacing with our residents and making sure that they've got the support and the training and the resources that they need, that they're being loved on.
Yeah.
We're implementing some monthly professional development things, not just around the hard skills of what it means to work in a clerk register's
Sure.
office, but working with them on work-life balance, on stress management, on personal finances,
Right.
all of those things so that my staff can continue to be well-rounded and balanced individuals
Right.
as they interact with the residents. One of my clerks at the counter, they will start their day perhaps with someone that's coming in very neutral to renew their gun license. No big deal, routine, what some folks would say, bureaucratic procedure. The next person that comes to them is having the happiest day of their year.
Right.
They are there to apply to get married,
Right.
and they're celebrating, and my staff are celebrating with them. But the customer right behind them just lost their father and needs a death certificate.
Right.
So we see the full gamut of human emotions.
Oh yeah, the emotion side of things.
It's wild. We
Right.
see all sorts of emotions in a half hour.
Right.
We see all of this. So really making sure that my staff have the tools that they need to be successful in their own mental health and their belonging is a big mission that I'm trying to push over to this next term.
No, that's fantastic. I mean, and work-life balance, that's a big thing as well. You don't have the luxury of necessarily working from home. There's a reason there's an office. You go there to get certain documents, you go there to file things, whatever it might be, so knowing that you're going to be in the office all day and you're dealing with people face to face, that's important. That's important. I applaud you for the mental well-being aspect of it.
Trying. And we're right now piloting a program for a 4-day work week in the
Awesome.
county clerk's office and making sure that we aren't reducing the services that we're offering, but
Sure.
again, making sure that our staff are in a way that they can best serve
Well,
the residents.
You get a year like this,
Right.
they might need that little bit of a break just to mentally be more prepared for the next week. And I think we're seeing more and more too, where we've had people on the podcast, we talk about the importance of mental health. And I think that is whether you're really struggling with it or just like if you're the daily grind of being in an office, sometimes you just need that little bit of a break.
And it's something I have to remind myself of, and I try to remind my staff. As an elected official who represents 400,000 residents,
Mhm.
there really isn't much of a day off for me. Going
No.
to the grocery
No.
store
Right.
isn't a quick trip. There's no 5-minute trip to Walgreens, right? Everything is an hour and an hour and a half.
Right.
And myself investing in mental health, making sure that my staff is taken care of, but also having those conversations in our community that it's okay to not be okay and to seek help, but also to notice those things that we have in our community that have such an impact on mental health.
Mhm.
I think one of the biggest things that we have that we should be so proud of is both at the county level and our local level, these amazing park systems that provide support to individuals that can help people's mental health, that you can go out for lunch and go take a walk at one of our parks and nature centers, and that has such an impact on young folks and adults. And I know a lot of our parks have some really great programming, and we need to do everything that we can as a community to make sure that we're holding on to those resources and protecting our parks.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I
Absolutely
can agree more
agree.
with you on that. I mean, get outside.
Yeah, no lights on, as dark as it can be, like an IT gremlin, just sitting in the dark, doing what I can do.
Yeah,
But-
that really is. I couldn't say more. Just get outside and enjoy what we have. And I think you look at Genesee County.
With the exception of winter, I mean, let me just stand on my soapbox here. I hate winter in Michigan. Everybody's like, oh, the seasons. I'm like, if I look at it this way, if I want to see snow, I'll travel to snow.
It's because you wear flip flops.
It has nothing to do with me wearing flip flops.
And I'm the opposite. I hate summer.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, no. You found
all
your
summer,
division
all
right
the
here.
time. Let's go.
So, Dominique, I would say you've touched a little bit on the importance of that mental health for not only your team, but yourself. And you are, as a public official, and I mean, one of the largest counties in the state of Michigan, how do you balance being a public servant, an individual, but then also right now a candidate for office? Not only are you working for a year and a half getting ready for all these elections, but then yourself running for office and working with a wonderful team. How do you balance all of this?
It's definitely a challenge, especially being not only the youngest county clerk in the state, but one of the youngest elected officials that we have in our community. There's only a handful of other young elected officials, which means not only are you trying to do the work, but there's this almost expectation that you're going to fail, that you don't know what you're doing, and you
Sure.
have to constantly try to prove yourself that you know what you're doing, that you're educated, that you can handle this. And the burdens of holding the office, and especially in an election year, the role of being an election administrator, who I have myself have received death threats over what people think the results of the election are going to be before we're over a month away from the election.
Sure.
And so for me, it's really important that I'm protecting my own well-being and my own mental health. And I have a couple of different things that I really employ. One of the biggest things, and being in elected office, as I mentioned, is there's really no off days. So you've got to really schedule that. So one of my things, and my staff knows, is Sundays are almost completely off limits. Sundays are my self-care days. And that usually means that I'm not going to community events. If somebody big name is in town, I'm probably not going to go if it's on a Sunday. I try not to have to go run errands on Sunday because, like I mentioned, a run to the grocery store
Gonna
is
bump
still
into somebody.
it's still
right?
going to
Yeah.
end up being a couple hours of work. Sundays are that time for me where I can spend some time on my own, either leaving the county and going to a park outside of our county, sometimes getting away in one of our county parks here, doing some meditation or some reading, things like that, just taking care of myself. The other thing that I've really had to just recently start employing, and it's made a huge impact, is the brick that I carry around every waking moment of my life, my cell phone.
Mhm.
I'm putting limits on that.
Yeah.
Because I want to be an accessible elected official, I give out my cell phone number maybe a little too freely
Sure.
to individuals, but I set a hard limit of what time I turn that phone off. And no matter what day it is where I'm at, my hard and fast rule is that my cell phone does not enter my bedroom.
Yep.
That's
Period.
perfect. No,
Smart.
you
I
got it.
plug it in overnight outside of my room. I don't use my phone as my alarm, and my bedroom is my sanctuary for that.
Sure.
That I'm not
Yeah.
going to be on my phone. Because even if I'm on my phone for something fun, I want to scroll a video. Give it 10 minutes, I'm responding to a text message.
Oh
or email,
yes.
you know?
Without
And you're the type of person that doesn't want to ignore someone that has questions or
Right.
looking for that extra little help with something. And I feel like that's important that you have to give that little break, and hopefully people recognize that. Yes, you are a public official, but you're a human being
Yes,
that does need that mental health, need that little break from things. And
exactly.
that's important.
I need to take a page out of you.
Yeah.
Just pump the brakes a little bit.
It is. But it's good though. No, I mean, Dominic, you covered so many things. I think Johnny, I think you can agree. We covered everything from all your responsibilities to what your team does to leading up to the importance of mental health to just how you interact with the public too. So we really do appreciate you spending some time just educating us.
Yeah.
And hopefully our listeners, just leaving them with a lot of knowledge of knowing what your office does and how they can request so many different things to help their lives out, whether it's a marriage license or, unfortunately a death certificate or anything. Even as a candidate, things are becoming more accessible for them.
And I can appreciate the innovation that you're instituting, because the institutions, the governmental institutions that are always getting railed upon, they're stuck in the Stone Ages. They're not doing this. They're not doing that. So to see the innovation that you guys are implementing and trying to push forward, it means a lot to those of us that are not, quote unquote boomers. We're excited that I can actually look at things online and I can, do some research and do a little bit of the pre-work like we talked about before. That means a lot to me because I want to be efficient with my time as well. Right? I don't want to waste your team's time. I don't want to waste my time. So if I can show up to the office and I'm readily prepared to renew my gun license, or I'm readily prepared to do whatever it may be, that helps me out tremendously. Because as much as I love to come to your office, I don't like coming to your office. We'll just be clear about that.
I feel that. And I've learned, I think, government in general, being an elected office, but especially something like this where I'm trying to innovate, is a lesson. Change takes time, especially a big organization. Things that I thought were, this will take maybe a month to redo a website, create a new record management
I like this,
system.
though, yes.
Oh no, RFPs 6-8 months later before we can start bringing in a service to then spend 6 months to build it out. We've done a lot of good things, but there's a lot more to come, and I'm trying to be patient, which is not a trait that many of us millennials have.
Bingo.
Yes.
That is 100% accurate. Well, Mr. Clemons, we appreciate the time, the energy, the effort today, and sitting down with us. What an amazing interview. It's such a great thing to be able to have insight into the election process because there's so much conversation about it. I'm not exactly sure when this episode will air, but it will be prior to election day. So I encourage you guys, and I'm put this in the show notes, listen to the words that our guest spoke about today. There are processes, there's protections, there's checks, and there's balances that are in place to ensure the integrity of our elections in America. And so I appreciate that. I love to hear it, and we can't wait to have you on again and see what other innovative things you're doing over there at the clerk's office.
Absolutely, and thanks for having me.
Sounds great. Travis, we'll see you on the next one, my friend.
Sounds good. Talk to you later, buddy.
All right, man. Have a great day. Thank you for listening. This has been the Community Collective Podcast. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.